I apparently have quite a bit to say about discovering my autism. It's been a life changing investigation. I can feel my brain right now wanting to just talk about everything that I've figured out and read and I'm wondering about and I have questions and I have ideas about, but they would be completely unwatchable and it wouldn't make sense and it wouldn't do me a whole lot of good. It would be like a mental vomit, but it wouldn't be any processing. So, and all of that long lead up story um, brings me to the story from my childhood about my little autistic self that was kind of the confirmation in my own brain that, yeah, Brian, you probably are autistic. I keep saying probably autistic, and I discovered my autism because I am not diagnosed and I am not going to seek diagnosis for a couple of reasons. One, it costs about $2,000 to do it. Two, a lot, there's a lot of anecdotes saying you have to really advocate for yourself to kind of convince the person doing the diagnosis that you are autistic. And three, like at 45 years old, an official diagnosis for autism wouldn't change my life. It would just empty my bank account. Like, I'm more concerned about getting my children diagnosed or seeing if they are autistic through an official diagnosis and kind of getting details on that because it might help them in their education, in schooling, or, in college or whatever. Right now, what would I do with a diagnosis? I would hang it on the wall and say, look, see, official diagnosis, I'm autistic. I, I know I'm autistic. As far as my mental health journey goes, I kind of started figuring out what was wrong with me in reverse. So I started at my PTSD from my time in service and worked my way backwards through my life. If I was autistic, that means I was autistic from day one. I was autistic from birth. That would have colored my entire life. I would have not been normal like I thought I was. Does that explain the difficulties and the struggles and my experiences in my life? How I interacted with people, what I did and didn't do, and all of this mental health difficulty that I had started to identify. I've got this and I've got this and there's this and these experiences and why does this keep coming up? And oh, by the way, at 45, I was really struggling with pain. There was an unexplained pain that underlied everything. And no matter how far back I peeled, this experience in the military, and then I went and did EMDR and got, that I felt a lot better about that. Or I did some talk therapy about this, and I kind of came to terms with that. And then, I discovered some complex PTSD, or I worked on my anger and figured out how to control that. I recognized my depression and what the cycle is for depression and how to work with that and be functional. And, what is my anxiety and how can I work on that so that it doesn't control my life as much? And I just kept peeling back these layers, and I thought with each one, I'm like, oh, gosh, that makes so much sense. I'm so glad to be more knowledgeable about it. And that should mean the pain that I feel inside of me goes down. It reduces. I should feel better. I should have a better outlook. And it didn't happen. Like, it didn't happen. I would have some relief or some reprieve or some joy or some understanding, and it would be sometimes a gigantic epiphany and feel wonderful, and my mood would be lifted for a time. And then inevitably, even without my depression sneaking in and doing its thing, I would become aware of an underlying pain, anguish. I began to suspect that could be a cause of my pain, because the pain, like I said, no matter how far down I went, the pain was still deeper. And if I was autistic, that was from day zero. So that might be the key to figuring out what this pain was that was buried so deep. If I can, it doesn't always work, but if I can figure out kind of what the pain is attached to or what it's dragging along with it, I can take that piece and reevaluate it in the lens of autism. I would like to say, like, oh, it makes it all perfectly make sense, but that hasn't happened yet. I'm waiting for that. But really, what happens is grief, rage, despair, denial. So I think I've found the root of this underlying pain. I have hope that when I get through this process of grieving, accepting, understanding, and moving forward with my autism, the pain will start to go away. And, I don't remember how all of it finally ended. I think that was a time where my dad said, it's just a figure of speech. And I'm like, well, I don't know what a figure of speech is. But that story popped into my head, fell out of my memory and came to life, like an old movie. And then I got to thinking about all when I was young, like between like 3 and 8, all the times I took people's words literally when I wasn't supposed to, when it was a metaphor, when it was an analogy, when it was a figure of speech, and I remember really struggling with that for a while. And then I remember I learned to read. And I started reading. And I read and I read and I read and I read. And, in the 4th grade, I had read Clan of the Cave Bear, which is like a 600-page book that high school kids read. So I read and read and read. And from reading over and over again, human interactions, I learned the concept of words aren't literal. What I call it now is I have an algorithm, or I have a heads-up display that I filter the world through. And way back at 3 years old or 5 years old, whenever I started building this, I started laying down rules of this is what this means, this is what this means, this is what this means. Now, again, I'm doing all of this without knowing it, but without knowing what it meant, I knew as I grew up that I had to pay really close attention to people and learn their habits and learn their ways of communication if I had any hope of understanding them and them understanding me. But I thought that's what everybody did. It makes sense to me now, looking back, evaluating this. I can see where every time I moved from one cultural bubble to another, I had to update my algorithm. I had to update my algorithm. I had to put all of the new data, all the new examples, all the new filter lines into my HUD or into my algorithm so that I could communicate well. The thing with the algorithm or the HUD, or what's commonly used in literature talking about autism, is the mask. You're masking up, hiding who you are, masking. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of effort. So a normal person, a neurotypical person, a person without autism, goes through life and experiences life on, this level, and up and down, and life is hard, and they have their struggles, and I'm not taking anything away from that. But an autistic person, let's say like baseline effort is here on average, an autistic person, to appear normal, to use their algorithm, to use their HUD, to use their mask, requires more effort. Just every day. And have their ups and downs and whatever. You get wore out faster. You get overloaded faster. Behavior-wise, it might look like you are antisocial. It might look like you get depressed a lot. It might look like you get angry quickly. It might look like a lot of things. And what it boils down to is you're putting in more effort than most people around you, and you just run out of energy. You get exhausted faster than they do. And my life has been punctuated by awkward communication that was not my intention, that burned bridges. And a lot of them were unrecoverable. We can't say anything except the fault is mine, behavior is behavior, words are words. But it really frustrates me that I had no intention of upsetting that person or communicating what they thought I communicated. But I did, and that's what happened, and now I have to live with it, and I get no chance to explain myself or make amends. I don't like it. I don't like it. I still, at this point in my journey, I want nothing more than to be normal. To be effing normal and not have the awkward communication difficulties that I have. But I can't change that. There's no cure for autism. Nor do I know in my heart of hearts there shouldn't be a cure for autism. Being autistic is weird, man. Only because it's new to me. It's a new experience. It's a new realization. I'm not saying it's bad. I have no problem with weird. I like weird. I know there's something else like I wanted to say and put it at the beginning, and I need to, like, it'd be great if I could remember what it is and put it right now so that I could just clip it and move it around in the editing, but I can't remember what it is.